Dear students, through Radio Khanchi 90.4 FM, Hum Sabka Radio, this is Dr. Sameera Sinha, Assistant Professor, Jagannath Nagar College, Ranchi University. In this second part of my lecture, I shall further elaborate and analyze Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan, prescribed in English Honours, Core Paper 9, Unit 3 of the 4th semester. We have already learnt of the circumstances under which this poem was written, its background, and the description in Strophe 1 of the pleasure dome built by Kubla Khan with its garden of incense-bearing trees, ancient forests, and sunny spots of greenery, an ordered and civilized world. In Strophe 2, the balance is upset, and the great romantic chasm cuts through the synthesis attained by the structured dome. Order or civilization becomes chaos. Sunny spots of greenery are exchanged by savage place, and the waning moon leads to ominous echoes of the subterranean world and the unleashing of frightening cosmic energies. For example, the sounds of wailing of the abandoned, as in line 16, woman wailing for her demon lover, or earth's thick pants, as in line 18, reminiscent of Wordsworth's words in the prelude, and I quote, "I heard among the solitary hills low breathings coming after me." The sudden springing up of the fountain and vaulting fragments flung up by it is also a kind of cosmic disorder that is depicted in this strophe. We can visualize, along with Kubla Khan, the phenomena described so beautifully by Coleridge through visual, auditory, and tactile imagery, as well as their intimate association. The dome, with sunlight upon it, the dome's shadow floating midway upon the waves of the seething river, which has been forced up, the fountain geyser with its hurling rocks just next to the dome, and the exposed icy caverns beneath from which the fountain has momentarily removed the earth's covering. The effect is apocalyptic, for what is revealed is a natural miracle. It was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. The river that now arises is sacred. It was sacred earlier too. The chasm too is holy and enchanted. It is described as deep romantic chasm, line 12. The river comes up as a fountain before it settles down again, flinging up fragments of earth and exposing caverns of ice. While the dome is a constructed perfect hemisphere representing perfect pleasure, the chasm reveals destructive, amorphous disorder. The sacred river, as it threads the taverns, makes us see and hear together the extraordinary sight of the shadow of the pleasure dome and the mingled music of the bursting fountain together with the exposed caverns. As the contraries of sun and moon, dome and cavern, light and dark, heat and ice meet, Kubla Khan hears ancestral voices prophesying war in line 30, or the voice of the dead speaking to the living within a scene of peace and prophesying war. Here we are reminded perhaps of Carl Jung's theory of collective unconscious, not individual but racial, primitive and pre-human ancestry, speaking of war between civilized man and primitive instinct. Though momentary upheaval itself, perhaps contrary and an answer of nature to Kubla Khan's decree of the power of art. The contrast of creation and destruction come together in the symbol of the fountain. Its sudden uprising reminds us of Blake's Wind of Beulah or Shelley's West Wind. To create and destroy, to bring sun and ice together. In Strophe 3, the shadow of the dome of pleasure, in line 31, restores order after the frightening cosmic energies, while the shadow gives us an insight into the mystery upon whose surface we live, as evinced by Plato in Timaeus, where he described the world as a moving image of eternity. The third strophe emerges into the light, the upper world of garden and sunlit river. A synthesis occurs, and the ominous echoes of the subterranean world becomes the mingled measure. In Strophe 4, Coleridge's imagination recreates in an act of remembrance a woman singing, a damsel with a dulcimer. The damsel is the Abyssinian maid, recalling to our mind John Keats's Mnemosyne, a figure of remembrance, as he writes, "She too comes from the past, but the forgotten world of gods." The dulcimer is the lyre that Apollo gets, a musical instrument. A Mnemosyne lyre, a lyre that brings back memories. The word Abyssinian here again has several connotations. First, it refers to the country of the undiscovered sources of the river Nile, the source of inaccessible power of life. Second, it refers to the high places where gods live, for example, Olympus and Mount Parnassus in Greek myth. Third, the word abyss refers to depths of darkness, for example, as Blake describes it, the distant deeps. The Abyssinian maid sings of Mount Abora. It means that Coleridge hears the song as it arises from the depths of his own being. He has only to recollect. And the fourth connotation is, which is another reference, is that earthly paradise traditionally takes one of its alternate placings in Abyssinia. A significant reference to it can be found in Milton's Paradise Lost, where he writes, "True paradise under the Ethiop line by Nilus' head." Coleridge's maid, in singing of it, is celebrating paradise. The poet now becomes present in the poem in person. In line 42, Coleridge writes, "Could I revive within me?" Once the poet saw the damsel, the Abyssinian maid, with her dulcimer in a vision, he now revives within himself her song of Eden and enters a state of deep ecstasy. The Abyssinian maid becomes his inspiration or muse, and he feels powerful enough to rescue the structure of Kubla Khan from the world of decay and imperfection, and recreates this in his poem. Perhaps an ideal world of Platonic form, as he writes from line 46 to 48, and I quote, "That with music loud and long, I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice." Is it possible? This can be done through transmutation, or what Coleridge himself calls in his critical treatise, Biographia Literaria, asymplastic imagination. Coleridge defines imagination as esemplastic power. It is a Greek word which means molding into one, unifying, or shaping into one. The poet here is in a sacred frenzy following the cult of Bacchus, the Greek god of intoxication and wine, mysteries and Orphic art. This holy dread warns the reader with "Beware, beware" in line 49. The poet becomes almost an ancient mariner, or recalls to our mind the frenzy that Wordsworth describes in the Prelude, Book 5, the form of the mad dervish. The dulcimer, like Apollo's lyre, is a gift or source beyond the poet's personal, but with this he has the power to revive Kubla Khan's decreed dome and also produce the imaginative miracle of the juxtaposed contraries, that too without the paradoxical upheaval that at once creates as well as threatens simultaneously to destroy the rare device which is the poem. This, as Coleridge reveals, is the power of poetic imagination to create more lastingly than even nature and art can do together. In doing this, the poet becomes a reincarnation of young Apollo. Plato once wrote about the souls of poets that they are flying like bees from flower to flower, wandering over gardens and meadows and honey-flowing fountains of the muses. In the last two lines of Kubla Khan, we find an echo of Plato's image of honey and milk. Those who hear Coleridge's song can see his visionary creation, because that is the imaginative power of poetry. The readers then would grant the poet the awe which is the due of the youth, with flashing eyes and floating hair, who has eaten the fruit and drunk the milk of paradise. Line 54. Let us review the four themes we had mentioned at the beginning of the analysis. First, remembrances. The poet recalls a vision. The poet expresses his desire to build it in the air. He surrenders totally to the muses and then recreates the dome. Second, the poem is an act of actualizing the inarticulate experience in apprehensible form. Third, cosmic energies break out from his mind and the dome is created by the artistic energy of the poet. The limitations of the scientific mind are non-existent. It demonstrates how the mind builds up the poem. From line 1 to 11, Coleridge builds the image. From line 12 to 28, that world of order and decree is seen breaking down. From lines 37 to 45, he surrenders to the music. And from line 46 onwards to the end of the poem, he recreates. Or if we may describe it in the words of logic, the poem begins with thesis, moves on to antithesis, and culminates in synthesis. This leads us to the second theme, that is, poetic experience itself. The making of the dome in air is possible in the poem because the poet has honey and milk, which are the ingredients of paradise. The poet's vision is an insight into the mystery upon whose surface we live. And here, the scientific mind, the scientia rectrix of the rational mind, is totally silent, and energy creates its own form. The musical effect of this poem is unmistakable. Coleridge's poems are notable for their use of sound to heighten emotion or deepen meaning, thus influencing and evoking reaction from the reader. Among other devices of sound, the following three devices are used in Kubla Khan, that is internal rhyme, alliteration, and assonance. Internal rhyme, that is rhyme occurring within a poetic line. For example, through caverns measureless to man. Or alliteration, which is the repetition of initial consonant sound, as in 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion, where the m sound is repeated 4 times in a single line. And third, assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds, as in so twice 5 miles of fertile ground, where the sound I is repeated. As I take leave today, I exhort you to remember a dream, which is an antithesis of the imaginary world and reality. Try and locate other various poetic devices within the poem Kubla Khan and build a pleasure dome for yourself too. I hope you enjoyed the poem. Thank you.